The stars shifted back into focus as the Vulsari research vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Commander Zhadik stood on the bridge of the eternal witness and watched the distant yellow sun grow brighter on the view screen. It had been 30,000 years since his people had last visited this unremarkable corner of the galaxy. 30,000 years since they had planted their monitoring station on the third planet and departed to observe other worlds for the Valkyrie. Such spans of time meant little. Their species had walked among the stars for millions of years, patient and methodical, cataloging the rise and fall of countless civilizations. Earth had been logged in their vast databases as a Class 7 primitive world, pre-industrial, tribal, showing potential but many millennia away from any real significance. The humans they had observed were simple creatures, barely past the Stone Age, painting on cave walls and hunting with sharpened sticks, interesting enough to monitor, but hardly worth direct contact. The Valkyrie had protocols for such things. Refined over eons of experience, young species needed time to grow without interference. Contact too early could warp their development in unpredictable ways. Better to watch from a distance, to record and study, and perhaps in another 100,000 years, when humanity had clawed its way to the stars on its own, then first contact could be mad. Exotic had reviewed the original survey files during the long journey back. His predecessor, Commander Yelmoth, had described the early humans as promising but fragile, and predicted they might achieve basic agriculture within 5,000 years. The monitoring station, buried deep in the Antarctic ice, was designed to last for millions of years, silently recording humanity's progress through automated systems. Every few thousand years, a Valkyrie ship would return, download the data, perform maintenance, and depart. This was supposed to be one of those routine visits. Commander, his navigation officer Terex called out, his voice carrying an unusual edge of concern. Our approach vectors are confirmed, but something is wrong with the planetary readings. Zhadik turned his attention to the sensor displays. His eyes widened. Earth's electromagnetic signature blazed across the spectrum like a cold star. The primitive world he remembered, dark except for occasional fires and lightning, now pulsed with artificial energy across every continent. That cannot be correct, Zhadik said. Run a full diagnostic on the sensor array. Already done, Commander, Terex replied. Twice. The readings are accurate. The science officer, Mirith, brought up a visual feed on the main screen. What they saw made the entire bridge fall silent. Earth's orbit was crowded with satellites, thousands of them, maybe tens of thousands, arranged in precise geometric patterns that spoke of advanced traffic control and communication networks. Massive structures floated in the space between Earth and its moon. Their purpose is unclear, but their scale staggering. Some appeared to be habitats. Others might be factories or power stations. The moon itself glittered with lights on its dark side. This is impossible, Mirith whispered. 30,000 years. Even the fastest developing species we have ever recorded would need at least 200,000 years to reach this level from where the humans were. Zhadik felt a fault chill run through his body. In all his centuries of service, studying hundreds of developing worlds, he had never seen anything like this. Species did not advance this quickly. They could not. There were biological limits, social limits, technological bottlenecks that every civilization had to overcome slowly and carefully. Take us into a high orbit, Zhadik ordered. Engage stealth protocols. I want to know what happened here before we announce our presence. The Eternal Witness moved deeper into the solar system, its advanced cloaking systems bending light and radiation around its hull as they drew closer to Earth. More impossible details emerged. The planet itself had changed. The ice caps were Smaller than they should be, new islands dotted the oceans. The atmospheric composition showed signs of deliberate engineering. Myra Eth worked frantically at her station, comparing current readings to the historical data. "Commander, the base," she said suddenly. "I cannot locate our monitoring station." Jadek felt his heart skip a beat. "Elaborate." "The geological markers are correct," Mireth explained. "The Antarctic continent is where it should be. The ice sheet depth matches our predictions. But where our facility should be located, there is nothing." "Nothing?" Jadek demanded. "Not destroyed?" "No debris, no radiation signatures, no structural remains," Mireth confirmed. "It is simply gone, as if it was never there. But our records clearly show we built it. The construction logs are intact." A terrible possibility began to form in Jadek's mind. Could the humans have found it? Mireth shook her head. Impossible. It was buried 3 kilometers beneath the ice, shielded against every known form of detection. A species at their level of development 30,000 years ago would not have had the technology to find it, let alone remove it without leaving any trace. Turix looked up from his console. "Commander, I am detecting energy signatures on the planet's surface that match Valkyrie power systems. Multiple locations. They are faint but distinct." The bridge fell silent again. Zatik stared at the blue and white sphere rotating slowly on the viewscreen somewhere down there. The primitive humans he had read about in the files had become something else entirely, something advanced enough to fill their solar system with technology, something that had apparently found a hidden alien base designed to be invisible to them for hundreds of thousands of years. And somewhere down there, pieces of Valkyrie technology were active. "Bring us to a synchronous orbit over the largest energy signature," Jadek commanded. "Prepare a scout team. We need to understand what has happened here." As the Eternal Witness moved into position, Jadek reviewed the first contact protocols in his mind. But those protocols were designed for primitive species. For cultures just discovering fire, agriculture, or writing, how did one make first contact with a species that had apparently leaped across 100,000 years of normal development in a single bound? How did one approach a civilization that had found your hidden base and done something with it? And most troubling of all, what did it mean that humanity had advanced so impossibly fast? Were they dangerous? Had they been contacted by another species despite Valkyrie claims on this world? Or had something else happened? Something the Valkyrie, in all their millions of years of experience, had never encountered before. Jadek watched Earth rotate beneath him and felt for the first time in his long life genuinely uncertain about what came next. The humans were no longer the watch. They had become something unknown and the unknown, even to a species as ancient as the Valkyrie, was a thing to approach with caution and respect. The scout ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a whisper, its hull phasing through air molecules without creating even a ripple of turbulence. Jadek had chosen to lead the reconnaissance team himself, along with Mireth and 2 security officers. They wore their most advanced stealth suits and carried scanning equipment that could analyze materials and energy sources from a distance. The largest Valkyrie energy signature had led them to what their old records indicated was once a small coastal settlement where primitive humans had fished and gathered. Now it was something that made Jadek's breath catch in his throat. A city rose before them, but calling it a city felt inadequate. It was an arcology, a single massive structure that stretched for kilometers in every direction, rising into the clouds and extending deep beneath the ocean's surface. The architecture defied everything Jadek knew about. Engineering towers curved and spiraled in ways that should have been structurally impossible, their surfaces covered in what looked like living material that shifted and flowed like water frozen in. Tine gardens grew on vertical surfaces, waterfalls ran Upward transparent tubes carried vehicles and people through the air in complex, three-dimensional traffic patterns that made Valkyrie city planning look primitive by comparison. This is old Mumbai, according to the local information networks. Mireth reported quietly as they moved through the outskirts in their cloaked scout ship. Population, 300 million. But Commander, look at the construction materials. She brought up an analysis on her handheld scanner. These buildings are grown, not built. The material is self-repairing, adaptive, and partially organic. It responds to environmental conditions and user needs. We have never seen anything like this. Jatik studied the redoubts. Valkyrie were considered master builders, their structures lasting for millions of years through advanced engineering. But this was different. This was architecture that thought, that lived, that evolved. There, one of the security officers said, pointing. A group of humans walked along a street below them. Zadik zoomed in the scout ship's cameras and felt another shock of recognition mixed with strangeness. They were human. Definitely. The basic form was the same. Bipedal, bilateral symmetry. Forward-facing eyes, but they had changed. They were taller than the records indicated, averaging over 2 meters in height. Their movements were too graceful, too efficient. Speaking of enhanced muscle control and neural optimization, some had skin that seemed to shimmer with faint patterns. Others had eyes that reflected light in colors that suggested technological enhancement. A few appeared to be breathing normally despite walking through an area where Mireth's scanner showed toxic gas concentrations that should have killed baseline humans in seconds. They have modified themselves, Mireth said. Genetic engineering, cybernetic integration, biological enhancement. These are not the same species we cataloged. They are still human, Jadik corrected. But they have become more. They flew low over the city, observing humans worked alongside machines that seemed to anticipate their needs. Children played in parks where the grass responded to their touch, changing colors and textures. In one plaza, a group gathered around a fountain that sculpted water into complex geometric shapes while a human stood in the center, apparently controlling it with thought alone. I have accessed their global information network, Mireth announced. It was surprisingly easy. They use quantum encryption, but the protocols are based on mathematical principles we discovered 2 million years ago. She paused, reading something on her screen. Her face went pale. Commander, they know about us. Jadik spun to face her. Explain. There are extensive files on our visit 30,000 years ago, Mireth said, her voice shaking slightly. They call us the Watchers. There are museums dedicated to the encounter, academic papers analyzing our observation methods, children's stories about the ancient aliens who watched humanity's first steps. They found the base. Jadik said it was not a question. Yes, Mireth confirmed. According to these records, human scientists discovered our Antarctic facility approximately 27,000 years ago. By then, they had already achieved faster-than-light travel on their own. Jatik felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him. 27,000 years ago they had FTL? That means they went from stone tools to interstellar travel in only 3,000 years, Mireth nodded. The historical records are detailed. They call it the Great Acceleration. Apparently, humanity developed agriculture, writing, mathematics, and basic science within the first 2,000 years after we left. Then they hit an exponential curve. Each generation built on the previous faster and faster. By the time they found our base, they already had colonies on a dozen worlds. She scrolled through more information. There is more. Commander, they did not destroy the base. They moved it, carefully, completely, every component preserved. According to these records, it is being maintained in a facility on their moon, waiting for this exact moment. waiting for us to return. The implications crashed over. Zhadik, like a wave humanity, had not just found evidence of alien life. They had found it, studied it, learned from it, and then made a conscious decision to preserve it and wait. That level of patience, of respect, of long-term thinking was something he associated with ancient species like his own, not with newcomers to the galactic stage. Set course for these coordinates, he said, pointing to a location Mareth had highlighted, the source of the Valkyrie energy signature. They flew toward the heart of old Mumbai, where a massive building stood apart from the others. It was built in a style that deliberately evoked ancient architecture, with pillars and domes and open courtyards, a sign in multiple languages, including Valkyrie script, identified it as the Museum of First Contact. They built a museum. One of the security officers muttered about us, without ever meeting us, inside the museum, visible through windows and open archways. Humans walked among displays Zhadik could see, holographic recreations of his predecessor's ship models, of the monitoring equipment his people had left behind, reconstructions of what early humans must have looked like when the Valkyrie first observed them. One exhibit showed a timeline of human development alongside projections of what the Valkyrie observers might have predicted. Predictions were all wrong. Humanity had exceeded every estimate by orders of magnitude. They are proud of surpassing our expectations. Mareth observed, "Look at how the exhibits are arranged. It is a story of growth, of proving themselves. They are not angry that we watched them. They are proud that we thought them worthy of watching." Zhadik was about to respond when every screen in the museum simultaneously changed. The holographic displays, the information panels, the interactive exhibits, all of them shifted to show the same message. It was written in Valkyrie script, perfect down to the smallest linguistic nuance. "Welcome back, elder friends. We have been expecting you. Please land at the coordinates being transmitted to your ship. We have much to discuss." An alarm chimed softly in the scout ship. "Commander." Tariq's voice came through from the Eternal Witness in orbit. "Multiple vessels are approaching our position. They appeared from nowhere. Their technology is..." He paused. "Their technology is beyond our ability to analyze. They are hailing us." Zhadik looked down at the museum, at the humans walking calmly among exhibits dedicated to his people. They had known the Valkyrie were here probably from the moment the Eternal Witness had entered the solar system. They had watched the Watchers, and now they wanted to talk. "Accept the coordinates," Zhadik said quietly. "Prepare for contact. And Tariq, stand down all weapons. I do not think they would do us any good." As the scout ship turned toward the designated landing site, Zhadik looked out at the impossible city spreading below him. Humanity had not just grown up, they had grown beyond. Now the question was not what the Valkyrie would do with humanity, it was what humanity would do with the Valkyrie. The landing site was a platform that had not existed moments before. Zhadik watched through the view screen as the structure assembled itself from what appeared to be thin air, nanomachines swarming together to create a solid surface large enough to accommodate both the scout ship and the vessels approaching from Earth's orbit. Those vessels made him deeply uncomfortable. They were sleek and elegant, shaped like water droplets frozen in the moment before they fell, their hulls reflecting light in ways that suggested they existed partially in other dimensions. The Valkyrie had theories about dimensional folding, but had never successfully implemented them. Humanity, it seemed, had moved beyond theory. Atmosphere on the platform is being adjusted to match our standard environment, Mareth reported. Temperature, pressure, gas mixture, even the lighting spectrum. They know our preferences exactly. The scout ship settled onto the platform with barely a whisper through the viewport. Zhadik could see one of the human vessels opening a ramp extended also appearing to assemble itself from nothing. 3 figures descended, too, were clearly human. Though both showed signs of enhancement, the third was something else entirely. It had a humanoid shape but seemed to flicker slightly. As if it could not quite decide on a fixed form, its outline was surrounded by a faint shimmer that hurt to look at directly. "Commander," Mirith said urgently, "I am reading multiple quantum signatures from that third entity. It is not a single being. It is thousands, maybe millions of consciousness patterns operating in sync." Jadek straightened his formal robes and checked that his translator was functioning. "Open the hatch. We represent the Velkari, and we will meet these humans with dignity." The security officers looked uncertain but took positions flanking the Dormareth, gathered her scanning equipment together. They stepped out onto the platform. The first human to approach was a woman, with dark skin and silver hair woven with what like fiber optic strands that pulsed. With soft light, her eyes were warm but ancient, in a way that made Jadek suspect she was far older than her appearance suggested. "Commander Jadek," she said in perfect Velkari, her pronunciation flawless. "I am Dr. Amara Okonkwo, historian and cultural liaison, on behalf of humanity. Welcome back to Earth." She gestured to her companion, a man with East Asian features and eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. "This is Chen Wei, our diplomatic representative." Then she indicated the flickering entity, "And this is Legion, a synthesis of human and artificial consciousness. They speak for the collective memory of our species." Legion's voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere, harmonizing with itself in impossible ways. "Greetings, Watchers. We have waited long for this reunion." Jadek bowed in the Velkari fashion, a gesture of respect between equals. "Dr. Okonkwo, Chen Wei." "Legion, I confess we did not expect to find humanity so." He paused, searching for the right word. "Advanced? Changed? Grown?" Amara smiled. "All of those. Please, will you come aboard our vessel? We have much to show you." The human ship's interior was unlike anything Jadek had seen. The walls seemed to be made of solidified light that shifted between transparency and opacity based on function. Control surfaces emerged from smooth walls when needed and disappeared when not. The whole structure felt alive and aware. They were led to a chamber that configured itself into a comfortable meeting space as they entered, producing seats that adjusted to Velkari physiology without being asked. "Your base," Chen Wei began without preamble, "was discovered by human scientists in the year 4891 by your calendar. We had already achieved faster than light travel by then, had established colonies on 17 worlds, and were beginning to encounter other species in the galaxy." He brought up a holographic display showing that Timon Azatik saw his people's base, buried in ice, slowly being excavated by humans using technology that handled it with reverent care, finding evidence that we had been watched, that we were not alone, that an advanced species had once stood on our world and observed our ancestors. Amara continued, "It changed us. It gave us perspective." Legion's multiple voices spoke in harmony. "We studied everything you left behind. Your observation logs, your biological samples, your assessments of our potential. Commander Yelmoth wrote that we were promising but fragile, that we might achieve agriculture in 5,000 years. There was no anger in Legion's voice, only something that might have been amusement. "We achieved agriculture in 200 years after you left." Mirith spoke up, unable to contain her curiosity. How did you advance so quickly? No species in our records has ever developed at this pace." Amara leaned forward. "Because we knew we were not alone. Your base proved that life existed elsewhere, that intelligence could arise, that the universe was full of possibilities. That knowledge removed our existential doubt. We knew the path was possible because you had already walked it. So we ran, Chen Wei added. We also learned from studying your technology, not copying it. You understand. We made sure to develop our own solutions to problems, but seeing what was possible. Understanding the principles behind your observations and your equipment. It gave us direction. It saved us perhaps 50,000 years of dead ends and false starts. Zhadik felt a complex mix of emotions, pride, that Valkyrie influence had helped concern, and how quickly humanity had grown, and something else. Something that felt almost like being left behind. Why did you preserve the base? He asked. You could have dismantled it. Studied it piece by piece. We did study it, Amara said, for 3,000 years. But we also understood what it meant. Your people placed that base there as a marker, a way to track our progress. Removing it felt wrong, like erasing part of our history. She stood and walked to the chamber's wall, which became transparent to show the earth rotating below. We moved it to preserve it, and we waited, because we knew. Eventually, you would come back, and when you did, we wanted to show you something. The holographic display shifted to show a star map. Hundreds of systems were marked in glowing amber. These are worlds where we found developing intelligent species. Chen Wei explained. Young civilizations. Some barely past the Stone Age, others more advanced. We watch them, as you once watched us, but we do not just watch. Amara turned back to face Zhadik. We learned patience from you. We learned the value of long-term observation, of not interfering carelessly in another species' development. But we also learned what you never taught us, because you never had the chance. Her eyes held his. We learned when to reach out. Legion's voices surrounded them. We do not make open contact with species that are not ready, but we leave gifts, anonymous, deniable, just enough to help them past extinction events or technological bottlenecks. A material that resists heat better than it should. Left where scientists will find it. A mathematical proof encoded in a naturally occurring crystal formation. Medicine-producing plants that appear in regions suffering from plague. We have saved 14 civilizations this way. 14 species that would have died out now thrive and grow. Zhadik sat back in his chair, his mind reeling. You interfere? We help, Amara corrected gently. There is a difference. You watched us struggle and nearly destroy ourselves a dozen times. War, plague, climate collapse, asteroid impacts. We survived by luck and desperate effort. But so many species do not survive. So many potential futures are lost because they needed just one piece of knowledge. One crucial resource? One lucky break. Chen Wei's expression was earnest. We do not give them technology they cannot understand. We do not make ourselves known as saviors. He paused, searching for words. We leave the door unlocked when we know someone is coming who needs shelter from the storm. Mirith was frantically taking notes. The Valkyrie consensus will never accept this. Non-interference is our oldest law, our most sacred principle. It exists for good reasons. Amara acknowledged. We have read your species' history. We know about the civilizations that were damaged by premature contact, by well-meaning interference that led to cultural collapse. But there is a middle path between total isolation and full contact. We have found it. She looked directly at Zhadik. We are offering to show it to you, to share what we have learned. You gave us the gift of knowledge that we were not alone. Let us give you the gift of knowledge that watching is not the only way to care. Legion's voices grew soft, almost reverent. Join us, elder friends, not as watchers and watched, but as partners. Your species has patience and wisdom beyond our years. We have drive and innovation you might find useful. Together, we could do more than either of us could alone. Zhadik looked at the star map, at the worlds humanity was protecting. He thought of his own species, ancient and proud, content to observe but never to touch, and he thought of the question that had been growing in his mind since they arrived. What if the Valkyrie had been wrong? What if watching was not enough? The journey to Luna was brief but revelatory. The human ship, which Amara called Remembrance, moved through space in a way that bent Jadik's understanding of physics. They did not accelerate in the traditional sense. The space around them simply changed, bringing their destination closer while they remained stationary. Spatial compression, Chun-Wei explained when he noticed Jadik's confusion. We learned the mathematics from studying naturally occurring wormholes. Your people's base had excellent sensor logs of gravitational anomalies in this solar system. Those logs pointed us in the right direction. Marith was scanning everything, our equipment struggling to keep up with the flow of impossible data. How long did it take you to develop this technology? Legion answered, their multitude of voices harmonizing. 12,000 years from the first theoretical framework to practical implementation. But we had help. The Kriaks were very generous with their time. Jadik's head snapped up. The Kriaks? They made contact with you? Amara's expression grew complicated. Eventually. Yes. After we had been in space for about 8,000 years, we encountered them. They are a kind people, patient like yours. They were surprised to find us so young yet so advanced. When we showed them records of your base, they admitted their own species had also observed Earth about 17,000 years before you did. The words hit Jadik like a physical blow. 17 species. Chun-Wei said quietly, that is how many visited Earth over the course of our development. 17 ancient civilizations, all watching, all recording, all waiting for us to grow up on our own. He looked out at the approaching moon. None of them said, hello. The lunar surface was transformed, where Jadik remembered barren craters and dust. Now stood structures of crystal and beauty cities, glowed beneath transparent domes. Massive towers rose from the regolith, connected by bridges that seemed too delicate to support themselves. The remembrance descended toward a structure that dwarfed everything around it, a vast hemisphere of dark material that drank in light. Its surface etched with symbols from hundreds of different languages. The archive of watchers. Amara announced, we built it to honor those who observed us, and to remember how it felt to be watched but never greeted. They landed in a bay that closed silently above them. The interior was pressurized with a comfortable atmosphere as they walked through corridors of polished stone that seemed to glow from within. Jadik saw display cases holding artifacts he recognized: Reek's observation drones, measurement equipment from the Solithar collective communication devices left behind by the Winzingers. Each species left something, Amara explained, usually by accident, sometimes through carelessness. A broken sensor here, a discarded piece of technology there. Humanity has been very thorough in our archaeological work. They entered a vast circular chamber. The walls rose up and up, disappearing into darkness above. Around the perimeter stood 17 alcoves, each one dedicated to a different species. Jadik walked slowly past them. The Kriaks exhibit showed holographic recreations of their first visit. Primitive humans cowering in caves while elegant alien ships observed from orbit. The Solithar display detailed their biological studies, including samples they had taken from various life forms. The Winzinger section played recordings of human music from different eras, apparently the one thing that species had found fascinating enough to document extensively. Each exhibit told the same story: arrival, observation, assessment, departure, and in every case, the conclusion was the same: promising but not ready for contact. Check back in 50,000 years. Do not interfere. Mira stopped at the Valkyrie alcove. This is magnificent. She breathed. The display was larger than some of the others, showing not just equipment but detailed reconstructions of the entire Antarctic base holographic figures of Commander Yelmoth and his crew moved through scenes of their initial survey. Their words, translated from the original logs, played softly. In the background, these humans show potential. Their art indicates abstract thinking. Their social structures suggest capacity for cooperation. We estimate they will achieve agriculture within 5,000 years. Recommend continued observation. Amara stood beside Jodic. Commander Yelmoth was kind in his assessments. Some of the other species? She gestured to a far alcove. The Dralics wrote that humanity would likely destroy itself within 10,000 years. They recommended minimal observation. Effort. As we were not worth the resources, we proved them wrong. Legion stated, satisfaction evident in their unified voice. We proved all of them wrong. Chunwei activated a central holographic display. A timeline appeared, showing human development against the backdrop of alien visits. This is what we want to show you. Commander, the pattern we discovered. The timeline began when the first observer species arrived 400,000 years ago. Small marks indicated each visit. Each period of observation, the human development curve was nearly flat for most of that time then. 30,000 years ago, something changed. The curve began to rise slowly at first, then faster, then exponentially. Your visit was the last one before our great acceleration. Amara explained, and you left the most sophisticated base, the one we eventually found. Some of our historians believe that finding evidence of your presence was the catalyst. Others think we were ready to accelerate anyway. But everyone agrees that knowing we had been watched, knowing we had been judged and found worthy of observation, it changed our collective psychology. Legion's voices grew contemplative. For millions of years, humanity wondered if we were alone. It paralyzed us with existential doubt. We created religions to explain our purpose. We fought wars over whose explanation was correct. We struggled with the weight of cosmic insignificance. Then we found your base. And everything changed. We were not alone. We had never been alone. The universe had been watching us, waiting for us to grow, and that knowledge set us free. Jodic felt a lump in his throat. We did not mean to influence you. We know. Amara said gently, that is why we are not angry. You followed your principles. But Commander, principles can be wrong. She led them to a final exhibit, one that stood alone in the center of the chamber. It was a wall covered in names. Thousands. Of them, tens of thousands. These are the civilizations that died while being observed, Chunwei said. Quietly, we have searched the records of every species we have encountered. We asked them about worlds they watched. These are the ones that did not make it. Mirith approached the wall, her scanning equipment forgotten. So many asteroid impacts while observers documented the event. Plagues while watchers recorded the death toll. Nuclear wars where ancient species had technology that could have stopped the launches, but chose not to interfere. Amara's voice was heavy with sorrow. We do not blame your people for all of these, but we ask you to consider how many could have been saved. How many civilizations? How many potential friends and partners and teachers were lost because observation was more important than compassion? Jodic had no answer. He stared at the names, each one representing an entire species that had reached for the stars and fallen. Short, how many of them had been desperate? How many had needed just one crucial piece of information? How many had died knowing they were being watched but not helped? This way, please, Chunwei said. They walked through a doorway into a smaller chamber, and there, preserved in perfect stasis, was the Valkyrie base. Every instrument gleamed as if freshly installed. Every computer hummed with carefully maintained power. The structure looked exactly as it must have 30,000 years ago. We have kept it exactly as we found it. Amara said, the original logs are intact. The biological samples preserved. The observation equipment still functional. Zhadik walked through the base his predecessor had built, seeing it through new eyes. This had been meant to watch humanity from a distance, to record their development without their knowledge, but humanity had found it, studied it, learned from it, and instead of destroying it or hiding it away, they had preserved it, waiting for this moment, waiting to show the Valkyrie what their gift of attention had meant. Why? Zhadik asked. Why keep it? Why wait for us? Legion's voices surrounded him, gentle and patient, because despite everything, despite being left alone for 30,000 years, despite finding 17 different species that could have helped us but chose not to, we understood. You were trying to protect us. All of you were. Your species had learned hard lessons about interference. You had seen cultures collapse when contacted too early. Your caution came from wisdom and experience. We respected that. But, Amara continued, respect does not mean agreement. We can honor your principles while believing there is a better way. She placed a hand on one of the preserved computers. We kept this base because it represents a crucial moment in human history. The moment we learned we were not alone. And we waited for you because we wanted to say, thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing we might be worth something someday. And thank you for giving us the chance to prove that there is more than one way to care for developing civilizations. Zhadik looked around at the preserved base, at the careful maintenance, at the reverence with which humanity had treated Valkyrie technology, and he understood this was not just a museum. It was a bridge between two philosophies, a way to honor the past while building toward a different future. Commander Zhadik stood alone in the preserved base, his crew having returned to the remembrance to give him time to think. The silence was profound, only the soft hum of maintained equipment and the whisper of recycled air broke the stillness. He ran his hand along a console that Commander Yelmoth had once used, the same console that had recorded humanity's early struggles, their tentative steps towards civilization, their promise and their fragility. 30,000 years ago, this equipment had sent data back to the Valkyrie consensus data that said humanity was worth watching, but not yet worth meeting by Valkyrie protocols. Earth should have remained under observation for at least another 50,000 years, perhaps longer. First contact was supposed to happen only when a species proved itself stable, mature, ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. But humanity had not waited for permission. They had grown faster than any species in recorded history. They had found the Watchers and made themselves impossible to ignore, and now they were asking the Valkyrie to change two abandoned principles that had guided them for millions of years, to embrace a new philosophy of careful intervention instead of pure observation. Zhadik thought about the wall of names in the archive, thousands of civilizations that had died while being watched. The Valkyrie had their own records of lost species. They mourned them, studied what went wrong, used their failures as cautionary tales about the dangers of premature development, that they had never asked the question humanity was forcing him to confront. Could we have saved them? His communicator chimed softly. Commander Mirith, this voice was tense. The consensus is demanding an immediate report. They detected our communications with the human vessels. They want to know what is happening. Of course they did. The Valkyrie consensus monitored all their survey ships, all their observation missions. They would have seen the data streaming back from Earth, the impossible advancement, the missing base, the contact with humanity. What have you told them? Zhadik asked. Only that we are investigating an anomaly, Mirith replied. But Commander, they are insisting on a full briefing within the next cycle. How do we explain this? How indeed? Zhadik could imagine the reaction shock. That humanity had advanced so quickly, concern about the implications for other observed species, fear that the humans represented a dangerous new force in the galaxy. and most troubling. The argument that humanity's success proved the observation protocol worked after all. Left alone to develop, they had reached the stars. Who was to say that interference would have improved things? Tell them I will provide a full report soon, Zhadik said. I need more time. He closed the connection and continued walking through the base in one corner. He found something he had not noticed before: a wooden plaque, simple and small. Mounted on the wall near the main observation console, the wood was ancient, carbon dated to be 27,000 years old. The inscription was in early human script, but a translation device helpfully displayed the meaning: to those who watched us grow, thank you for believing we could. We hope someday. To return the favor, Zhadik stood before the plaque for a long time. The humans who had first discovered this base, who had carefully excavated it and studied it and decided to preserve it. They had been grateful, not angry that they had been observed without consent, not resentful that they had been left alone, grateful for the attention, grateful to know they had been considered worthy of watching, and they had promised to return the favors. Zhadik suddenly understood what that meant. Humanity was watching over younger species. Now they were returning the favor the Velkari had done them. They were doing it differently, with lessons learned from being the watched rather than the watcher. He turned and walked back through the base toward the exit. Amara was waiting outside, sitting on a bench that overlooked a lunar garden where Earth hung large and blue in the black sky. Have you made your decision? She asked. I do not know what decision to make, Zhadik admitted. If I return to the consensus and tell them what you are doing, they will see you as a threat, a young species interfering in the natural development of others, risking the same mistakes that led us to adopt non-interference in the first place. And if you join us? Amara prompted gently. If I join you, I violate everything my species stands for. Zhadik said, I break protocols that have guided us for longer than your species has existed. I potentially fracture the consensus itself. Amara nodded slowly. That is a heavy burden. It is. They sat in silence for a while, watching Earth rotate as Zhadik could see the lights of cities, the shimmer of orbital structures, the constant movement of ships coming and going, humanity in motion, always moving, always growing. Can I show you something? Amara asked. She produced a small data device and activated it. A holographic display appeared between them. It showed a world, green and blue, with two small moons. This is Kethra Prime, Amara explained, home to the Kethril, a species that developed tool use about 50,000 years ago. The image shifted to show the planets, surface cities made of stone and wood, primitive metallurgy, early writing systems. They were on track to develop spaceflight in another 30,000 years. Amara continued. They were being observed by 3 different species, including yours. The image changed again. A massive asteroid appeared. Trajectory calculated. Impact point marked. 12,000 years ago. We detected this asteroid on a collision course with Kethra Prime. Our calculations showed it would cause an extinction-level event. The Kethril would die. And all 3 observer species had strict protocols against interference. Zhadik felt his heart sink. He knew this story. He had read the report. Your people intervened, he said quietly. We did. Amara confirmed. We used gravity manipulation technology to alter the asteroid's course. Carefully, subtly, making it look like a natural gravitational interaction with their outer planet. The Kethril never knew how close they came to extinction. The image showed the asteroid missing the planet by a comfortable margin. 14,000 years from now, the Kethril will achieve spaceflight on their own. They will join the galactic community. They will contribute their unique perspective and culture and knowledge. They will exist because we chose to act. She looked at Zhadik. Was that wrong? By our laws, yes, Zhadik said. By your compassion. No. And that is the question that haunts me. Legion materialized nearby, their forms shimmering into solidity. Commander Zhadik, they said. We understand your dilemma. We face it ourselves with every world we watch. When do we act and when do we observe? How much help is too much? When does protection become interference? We do not have perfect answers, but we have learned that doing nothing in the face of preventable tragedy is itself a choice with consequences. Chun Wei approached from the garden path, the Valkyrie. Consensus is hailing your ship again. They are demanding you return for debriefing. They have classified this mission as a potential security concern. Zhadik stood the moment had come he could return to his ship, leave Earth. Report to the consensus. Recommend that humanity be monitored closely. Perhaps even restricted if they continued their interventionist policies. It would be safe choice, the choice that followed protocol, the choice that kept everything as it had always been, or he could stay. He could learn from humanity. He could take their message back to his people, not as a command, but as an invitation to reconsider ancient assumptions. He could risk everything for the possibility that there was a better way. If I stay, he said slowly, if I learn from you and bring that knowledge to my people, what happens to the Valkyrie who disagree, who believe I have betrayed our principles? Amara smiled. Then you teach them what we learned from you. Patience. Change does not happen overnight. Not for species that measure time in millions of years. But change can happen if someone is brave enough to start the conversation. Zhadik looked up at Earth. His ship was up there, waiting. His crew was ready to depart. The consensus expected him to return with data, with reports, with recommendations that fit within established parameters. Instead, he was going to give them something they had not experienced in a very long time, a challenge to their certainty. I will stay, he said. For one lunar cycle, I will learn your methods. Observe your interactions with developing species. Study your results. Then I will return to the consensus and present what I have learned. What they choose to do with that information will be up to them. Amara extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Zhadik took it. Thank you, she said, for being willing to listen, for being open to change, for being brave enough to question what you have always known to be true. Legion's voices hummed with approval. The first step is always the hardest, but you have taken it. And whatever comes next, you will not walk that path alone. Chunwei activated his communicator. Shall I inform your ship? Zhadik nodded. Tell them I am conducting an extended investigation. Tell them the situation is complex and requires careful study. And tell them, he paused, tell them I have found something worth the wait. As Chenwei relayed the message, Zhadik looked around at the lunar surface, at the archive of watchers, at the preserved base that humanity had maintained for 30,000 years. He thought about Commander Yelmoth, who had stood on Earth and looked at primitive humans and seen potential. That potential had been really